He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. All he knew was that she looked scared. And that was enough for him to step in. It was a cold morning in downtown Seattle, the kind that made the city's glass towers look like gray ghosts hiding in the mist. Ethan Cole had just dropped his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, at school before heading to his usual coffee shop, a small corner cafe where the warmth of espresso was his daily comfort. His life had been a quiet rhythm of routine since his wife passed away 3 years ago. Work. Home. Lily. Repeat. That was his world now, and he liked it simple. Or at least he told himself he did. But that morning, simplicity shattered. She was sitting 2 tables away, a woman in her early 30s, wrapped in a long beige coat, her eyes restless as if she was searching for a way out of something invisible. A man stood in front of her, his voice sharp enough to slice through the cafe chatter. "You think you can just walk away from me?" he hissed. Ethan's grip on his coffee cup tightened. He hated confrontation, he had enough battles at home and work, but when he saw the woman flinch, something in him snapped. He stood, walked over, and said calmly, "She asked you to leave her alone." The man turned. "Mind your business." I am, Ethan replied, steady as stone. "And my business is making sure people around me are safe." The cafe went silent. The man stared at him, jaw tight, then muttered something under his breath and stormed out. The woman sat frozen for a moment, her hands trembling around her coffee cup. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan shrugged, awkward. "No one deserves to be yelled at like that." She smiled faintly, a flicker of warmth through the fear. "You'd be surprised how many people just watched." He didn't ask who she was or what had happened. He just nodded and went back to his seat, never realizing that this brief act of courage had just altered the course of his life. Her name was Isabella Hart. And she was a billionaire. But not the kind splashed across magazines, not the smiling face behind luxury yachts or endless parties. She had built her fortune quietly, creating a chain of ethical coffee companies that helped struggling farmers. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was sitting in a cafe owned by someone else that morning, trying to disappear from her own world. The man who had confronted her was her ex-fiancé, a corporate shark who had tried to control every part of her life, from her wardrobe to her company decisions. Breaking off the engagement had triggered weeks of chaos, reporters, lawyers, and whispers. She had escaped to this little cafe just to breathe, and then a stranger had stood up for her. She watched him leave, the way he stopped to adjust his jacket before stepping into the cold. His hands were rough, simple, a man who looked tired but kind. There was something grounded about him, something real in a world where everything in her life felt bought or borrowed. A week later, fate crossed their paths again. Ethan was running late to pick up Lily when the rain started pouring. His car had broken down that morning, and he'd taken the bus to work. By the time he reached the cafe again to grab some takeout for Lily, he was drenched. And there she was, Isabella, sitting by the window with her laptop, eyes lighting up when she saw him. "Hey," she said softly, standing up. "You're the man who saved me from a disaster." He smiled. "Just doing what anyone should." "Not everyone would," she replied, then hesitated. "Sit with me? I owe you a coffee." He almost said no. He didn't have time for strangers, not with Lily waiting, but something about her voice, calm and warm, made him pause. Saturday they talked. About little things at first, how he worked as a mechanic, how she consulted for coffee companies. She didn't tell him she owned them. He told her about Lily, about how being a single dad wasn't easy, but she was his reason to keep going. Isabella listened, really listened, and something in her chest softened. For years, her world had been filled with people who wanted something: her name, her power, her money. But Ethan wanted nothing from her. He didn't even ask her last name. When he left, she found herself watching the door long after he was gone. Days turned into weeks. They started meeting more, always at the cafe. She'd bring Lily small treats, talk with her about school projects, laugh at her jokes. Ethan found himself smiling more than he had in years. There was something effortless about Isabella, as if she carried sunlight in her voice. But then came the day the truth slipped out. Ethan had just gotten off a long shift when a coworker burst into the shop holding a business magazine. "Dude, that woman you've been seen with, she's on the cover." And there she was, Isabella Hart, billionaire entrepreneur. Ethan froze. The laughter they'd shared, the long walks, the quiet coffee evenings, suddenly it all felt like a dream. He didn't text her back that night. Or the next, when she came to the cafe and found him gone, her chest tightened with something she hadn't felt in years, fear of losing someone who saw her for who she was, not for what she owned. She found him outside Lily's school 2 days later, waiting under a broken umbrella. "You lied to me," he said quietly. "I didn't," she replied. "I just didn't tell you everything." He looked away. "You could have. I don't belong in your world." Her voice trembled. "And what world is that? One where people pretend to care?" "Ethan, the only time I felt real was when I was with you and your daughter. You treated me like a person, not a headline." For a long moment, rain filled the silence, then Lily ran up, tugging his sleeve. "Daddy," she came. Ethan looked down at his daughter's beaming face, and something inside him broke open. Maybe he didn't belong in her world. But maybe she wanted to belong in his. Months later, the cafe that had once been just a stop in their routines became something more. Isabella quietly invested in expanding it, turning it into a community hub, a place where local families could find warmth, affordable coffee, and kindness. Ethan managed it, with Lily always helping behind the counter. And sometimes, when the last customer left, Isabella would sit across from him, her hand brushing his as she whispered, "You never knew who I was. But you saw me anyway." He smiled, eyes soft. Maybe that's how love's supposed to start, when you stop seeing what the world tells you and start seeing what your heart does. Outside, the city lights flickered through the rain, and for the first time in years, both of them felt like they were finally home.